Hi.
Hey, Michelle.
Hey, thanks for having me in today. I really wanted to get back together with you again because we, had a really good talk about the price of waiting.
Yeah.
And as I told you, we've had a lot of interest in one of our listings, to the point where we've had agents call and say, hey, I just sent over an offer to my clients to sign. And then a couple days go by, we're still not hearing anything. And I'm calling the agent and they're like, I don't know what happened. Family interfered and said, you need to wait for rates to go down. You need to wait for prices to go down because prices are going to go down. But I mean, from what I've been in the business since 97.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I can tell you is that all the indicators show that we still have a shortage of inventory. Okay. Like you and I talked about earlier, rates don't look like they're going anywhere for a while.
Probably not.
And if they were to start going down, I think we're going to have a buying frenzy, which is going to cause multiple bidding again, prices going up. So
yeah, and it's kind of it's a double-edged sword on this front specifically. And just to clarify for those listening, essentially the debate is, the interest rates are pretty darn high. If they go down, we will save a lot of money. But that's if you were looking at, if you could magically snap your fingers and drop interest rates at this very moment, would that scenario work? But obviously that kind of stuff takes time. So the idea is, sure, absolutely, you wait and interest rates, they'll probably go down at some point. It just makes sense. That's where the market wants it to head. Once the Fed starts dropping interest rates, once inflation hits that 2% goal, we will see interest rates drop. But exactly what you said towards the tail end, the second they start to go down, there will be a frenzy in the market. And it makes it tough. So the cost of waiting is something I know we've been talking a lot about, and I know I've had a lot of personal conversations with buyers and realtors on this conversation. So I did this up for you. It's a little cost of waiting analysis. We have on the left side, and the viewers will see this as well, the left side shows the loan today at about, the property is going to be $475,000. The 20% down is a $380,000 loan. Okay. And the idea is if we wait 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, and we wait for interest rates to drop, there's going to be almost an unintended consequence, which is the monthly payment of the house is going to either stay the same or increase.
Right.
Yeah. And we talked about why that is, but I think you know the reason more personally than I do.
Well, I'll be honest with you too. I think I have kind of an upper hand on some agents because I come from the Bay Area and I still sell a lot in the Bay Area. And then I'm here in Amador and I've sold in Tuolumne, Calaveras and Amador, which of course the prices here, are nothing compared to the Bay Area. I mean, you can buy a winery here for what you can buy a 3-bedroom, 1-bath house there.
Yeah.
However, what we are finding is that they're starting to get multiple bidding again in the Bay Area. And we all know that market drives all the other markets.
And I do know the national number for the amount of bids received on a house. 33% of all houses that go for sale get at least a bid over asking price.
Right.
33%.
Right. And I always tell my clients, I only need 2 offers to give you my value, because my value to you is in my negotiation skills. And I can't negotiate that well with just one offer because the attitude is the seller usually is, well, I only have one offer. How do I know if it was a good offer?
Exactly.
And the buyer is like, why are you countering me? You have no other offers. Okay. So the negotiation skills come in when we have 2 or more, where, I know there's some agents in other areas that price a home so far below the value so that they get 30, 40 offers and they get written up in the newspaper.
Yeah.
To me, I think that's a total waste of everybody's time because then you usually get 25 offers that are almost all the same. So it's like, what are you doing that for? Are you doing that just to pat yourself on the back?
It's kind of like Cinderella. You just want to be the prettiest girl at the ball at that point.
Exactly. So it's like, I think that if people have something like this spreadsheet that you did in front of them, it's not just us agents talking at them, because we come across as like a salesperson.
Yeah. And speaking of salesperson, A lot of people are probably going to look at this and be like, well, where'd you get those numbers? These green ones at the top is the property value increase in percentage. You'll see that after 6 months, it increased 2.5%. These are actually using the real world data numbers right now. We are on an average pace, okay, Michelle, an average pace of anywhere from 7 to 10% appreciation in 2023 alone. Most people are leaning more towards the 10, but 7 to 10%. So I went with a conservative guess of 5. And that's exactly what we have been seeing for the last 6 to 7 months. So this is very true, very real to life. And if we just expound that upon 3 years, you can expect that the property's value is going to be close to 15% more than what it is now. And even if you think, okay, yeah, my interest rate's going to drop all the way back down to 6%, you're still going to end up with a monthly payment. Let's just highlight this. If you bought the house for 6 3/4 interest, 6.75% interest rate, your monthly payment would be about $3,118. Fast forward 3 years, your interest rate is now 6%, but your monthly payment is higher. Yeah, that's the cost of waiting right there. Right
Well,
there.
you talk about true time and true life. So here's another example. 5 years ago, I bought a house up here, and I didn't sell my house in the Bay Area. Okay, so I bought a house up here, and that house has actually gone up 22%.
Are you kidding?
Yeah, in 5 years. Okay, 22%.
Yeah.
All right, and then the house that I sold in the Bay Area, here's the thing that we went through. I bought the house right before the market crash.
Gotcha.
So I bought it at the top, right? And for a couple of months, I watched all my neighbors selling for 50, 100, 200,000 more than what I paid for mine. And I'm like, I'm sitting pretty, right?
Yeah.
Then the next door neighbor short sold. Then the neighbor on the other side foreclosed on. And the short sale sold for almost $170,000 under what I owed. Okay. So my husband and I look at each other, what are we going to do? It's like, well, as long as we can afford the payment, we would have to rent somewhere anyway. And the Bay Area has always been a terrible place to have to try to rent. There's just no rentals. So we hung on to it. So that was 2008. So swing forward to 2018. Okay. So 10 years later. So we had all these properties, $100 to $200 to $300,000 less than what we all owed. I hung in there. I turned around and sold my house for 3 times what I paid for it. Okay.
Yep.
So it's like, what can you invest in where you get that kind of return on your money?
That's the key word, I think, is investment here. Look, buying a house is extremely personal. Okay. It's where you live. It's where you grow your kids. It's where you retire. It's where you go old and live with your loved ones. It's very personal. But at the same time, if you look at it from an investment perspective, it almost becomes, I hate to say it, foolish to wait at this point in the market. If you're on the fence and you're thinking, and the biggest reason for that, there's actually a lot of reasons. I'm just going to go down the laundry list if you bear with me. You have the number one driving factor for wealth is homeownership. Homeowners, and I hope I have the number right. I might throw it up on the screen, but homeowners have about 40 times more wealth than non-homeowners. And on top of that, if you think about just the investment side of things, it's one of those investment markets that if you wait at least 10 years, you are more than guaranteed to get a return on your investment.
Exactly. Well, I think the other thing too is that after the only thing that good came from the 2008 collapse was that people started realizing that their house shouldn't be an ATM. Okay. That's the one thing that I think we've seen a huge change in. But when you were saying about the wealth and that they have less debt, I think it's because when you own your own home, you have to budget.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. You have to budget. Whereas when you're renting, you think you don't have to budget, but really renters need to budget more than we do because they don't know what their cost of living is going to be in 6 months.
Talk about interest rates. That's 100% interest rate right there.
Yeah, exactly. And when people say to me, well, if I buy a house, my house payment is going to be $3,000. And I'm like, but you're paying $3,100 to pay someone else's mortgage. I mean, I just dealt with someone who had called me. They have been renting from the same landlord for 22 years.
Wow.
I'm like, well, that was nice of you. You bought them a house.
Yeah, you paid off the house you're living in for someone else.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's like, what tax, you have no children at home. What are you doing? How are you, paying your taxes and everything? Well, yeah, we owe every year. You have no write-offs. You have no equity. You have no wealth. Do you have any savings? Well, not really. Well, how is that happening?
Yeah.
And I think it's time that people get back to the old systems of doing it and sit down and live within your means and find out what's most important. And again, sorry about that. What's most important is security. And I think home ownership is the ultimate security.
And one big thing that's changed from now back from 2008 is that home loans are very, very securely made. A lot of buyers, they can't just walk in and get a loan. That's what caused 2008, as you know. Just tell them you work at McDonald's and you make 6 figures. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But nowadays, there's ability to repay, and that's what we have in the loan world. Essentially, we have to ensure, based on salary, based on bank statements, credit scores, and a whole slew of factors, whether or not someone can afford a particular loan. And there are certain requirements in budgeting that we have to account for. If a person cannot financially afford it in their budget, we will not give them a loan.
Right.
And it's actually illegal to give anyone a loan like that. So we can't have another 2008 because of that reason. But in addition, it's exactly what you said, living within your means. If you can qualify for a mortgage, technically speaking, you can live within your means. Maybe it doesn't suit your lifestyle, but on paper, you can live within your means.
I was in the office one day back before the big burst, and I heard a real estate agent talking to the in-house lender who said, they were talking, and she said something about, I just want some concrete number on what I can afford. And he says, you know what, hun, find the house that you want and we'll make it happen. And she's like, well, how's that possible? He goes, we'll make it happen.
Yeah.
And so that agent wound up buying a house in the neighborhood that I lived in. I bought the smallest model they had. She bought the biggest model they had. And guess what? A couple of years ago when I sold my house, I still had that house, and she's living in one of her 1-bedroom, 1-bath rentals because it was all stated income.
Yeah.
Fog a mirror and you got a loan.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Now it's much more different. And
right.
I like the idea of you have a home, you've bought a home, you have to force yourself to save money. And I know what you said earlier is people used to treat their home like an ATM, and to some degree that still kind of can take place. There are equity lines and refinances, but that's not what we're here for. But if you're forcefully saving that money into your mortgage payment, you're paying down your principal, you will have that nest egg. You will have that wealth. I actually had a lady not too long ago, she purchased a house. She had a really great deal. She was one of those people that rented for over a decade from the exact same people. Luckily, the landlords were extremely gracious and they worked on her and got her a sweetheart deal. And then what happened was we got the appraisal in, and now all of a sudden the house is worth a lot more than what they negotiated at. And here it was, she's sitting there and she's like, oh man, I know I can afford the payment, but it's a lot more than I pay in rent right now. And I was like, look, are you crazy? You have instantly, the moment you sign the papers on the house, 6 months pass by, you made, and I'm just making up a number, $80,000 just because you bought this house. Now, I know that scenario is not the same for everyone, but the mentality that she had was, yeah, the rent was a little bit cheaper, and I know I can afford the mortgage, but I don't really want to. But gosh, now she has that sweet equity in her home, but she also has this ability to force her savings and create a future wealth for her and her family.
I reached out to our agents this morning and I said, because, I run a team, and I said, you have to remember that right now is a good time to talk to your clients because they're kind of in the dark or they're getting miscommunication. I mean, you can go on the internet, Instagram, Facebook, then go on 3 different news stations, and guess what? You're going to hear something different from everyone. And it's like, now's the time to reach out. And I said, you want to look like a hero? Go back and do a CMA for everyone who bought a house between 2016 and 2020, before they announced that we had COVID. And I said, and send them a CMA and say, hey, I just want to congratulate you on the great investment that you made.
Yeah.
Okay, because the truth of the matter is, that was an amazing investment.
Yep.
And then you brought up a point about, not so much using it as an ATM like to buy plasma TVs, but I always tell people, borrowing money to fix up your property, that's an investment.
Yeah.
Okay, that's, like I said, the price of doing business. You may pay this interest to do that, but at least this is a write-off for you, where some people will go and they'll like I said, buy the plasma TV, or they'll run up credit cards to go and buy all this materials to pay someone to improve their house, when if they just borrowed against their home, they have the write-off. And I just don't think that people think that way anymore.
Yeah, and I know part of it is there's a big fear factor in all of this, because right now, just truly speaking, American debt is at its all-time high. Consumer debt is over $1 trillion. The individual person owes way more than they used to just a year ago. We see inflation, we see all these issues, but really what this is aimed towards is the buyer that is on the fence, that they think they can afford it, they know they can afford it, or they're hoping they can afford it. And they're waiting because they think that there's going to be greener grass in the future. And Michelle, truthfully, I don't know.
We don't know. We don't know. If we had a crystal ball, we'd be billionaires.
I wouldn't be sitting in this hall. I'd probably have my feet up right now and I wouldn't know your name. But the reality of the situation, what it boils down to is, right now, we have seen for the past 7 months an increase in appreciation of homes. We have some of the lowest inventory we have ever seen in this industry. We have some of the highest population numbers we have seen in the United States. And we have high interest rates that aren't showing slowing signs. It could stay that way for another year for all we know.
And you figure construction nearly over the last 2 years almost came to a halt, which was bringing up our inventory.
Forgot about that, yeah.
Okay. And now construction is going a little bit at a time, but I've actually done new construction before, where I worked with a private builder and he built 24 homes. So I learned about, white paper, getting all the information on how to get the houses going. And like he was telling me, he was saying, the reason why I don't build more homes than that is in order to do phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3.
Yeah.
He says, we get like what's called a contractor's best on our loans. And he says, I have to sell over half of those in phase 1 to start working on phase 2.
Gotcha.
And he says, because I got to start paying back.
Yeah.
The construction loans.
Yeah, they're short term.
Yeah, they're short term. And so now the price of building a new home, between the rates and between building materials and stuff like that, it's like new home construction is not at the pace that we need it to be.
Yeah, and actually, small touch on that from the loan side, like if for an individual to go and do a new construction, it's not all, rose-colored glasses with it. It's extremely expensive upfront to do it. Yeah, if you were to shrink down and take a 30-year scope and collapse it, building your own home is much cheaper. But if you start up front, you have to pay maybe 25-40% initially down, and then there's no telling what your interest only loan, it just gets nuts.
Yes
So
yeah, and there's no more banks or lenders doing the thing like when I did that track homes, they did a loan where they had the contractor's best and then the builder's best. And what they did was, so you could buy a home that wasn't built yet, and the interest rate was guaranteed for a year. And then, so whatever it was at a year, you get ready to go. But anything past that, then it was readjusted. But the problem is now is nobody's doing that.
No.
Because why would they do that?
Yeah, it's not safe.
Yeah, imagine being a builder a year and a half, 2 years ago, and saying, oh yeah, we're going to guarantee you the rate for a year. They'd be in trouble right now.
And just over actually just a few months ago, we have seen all these builders and all these loan companies change their rules for that. So the way they qualify certain buyers is different. So we are seeing the uncertainty in that especially. So there's so much that goes into this. My biggest thing when it comes to buyers on the fence is, if you're waiting for prices to come down, if you're waiting for interest rates to go down, you have another thing coming, because this is not 2008. 2008, there was a lot of inventory. There were a lot of foreclosing homes. There was a lot of defaults on mortgages. There was a lot of bad mortgages that were made. Now, it's really difficult. It really is difficult. Someone has to intentionally commit fraud in order to get a loan they do not qualify for.
Right.
And because of the fact that we have extremely low inventory, extremely high demand, we are seeing prices go up. Interest rates are rock steady where they are right now. And I just cannot see a reason to wait. If you have the ability to buy, it's time to buy.
I agree. My son is a millennial, and he's a real estate agent and has done really well over the last 4 years. And he is educated enough to know, and he looks on a regular basis. He's trying to find a house now.
Yeah.
And he knows that the rates are going to be higher. But like I told him, I said, so you get into a rate that's between 6.5 and 7 right now. I said, when I bought my house up here, I paid 5.78 because it was a second home.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. And, you know, a lot of times people will say to me now, well, why don't you refinance? Well, I only owe $200,000. Why would I refinance?
Yeah. Reset the clock.
Yeah, reset the clock, the whole bit. But I mean, but if I needed to remodel it or something, heck yeah, I'd do it.
And what a lot of people don't realize, so I've been seeing a lot of these memes on Facebook and Instagram, whatever, and it's the joke of people who bought their homes or refinanced in 2020 during COVID when interest rates were 2 or 3, and now they feel trapped. They don't know what to do. They have all this equity in the house, and if they refinance, they're going to get a high interest, and they're just ruined. But there's equity lines.
Yeah.
You don't need to go and change your first.
Right.
You just go get a second, on top of it, and pull out whatever money you need to do those kinds of things. Yeah. I even had a client who had maybe $50,000 left in his mortgage, wanted to refinance so he could purchase another property. And he talked to already a couple of lenders, and I said, what are you doing? Get an equity line. Take that money, buy the other house for cash. Don't waste all of your money straight out. Well, I don't want an interest-only payment with a balloon. Yeah, there are also equity loans. You can have a second as a loan. It's fixed. It's not adjustable, and you can draw it out, and it's paid off in 30 years. But it's completely separate from your first, so you don't have to touch that. You don't have to worry about changing your rate.
Well, the thing that I think is funny is that people that are afraid to get into the market right now because of the rates, it's like, have they never watched what happens in the real estate market? It's like we're hills and valleys, hills and valleys, hills and valleys, and it's like what goes up will come down. However, is it going to come down at the pace that you need it to?
Yeah.
Okay. And unfortunately, when rates come down, prices go up. And when inventory is low, prices go up even more.
Yeah. So I have a question for you, because you have much more seniority and experience than I do. My impression of how people buy a home nowadays is they dream about it. When they think it's a reality, they come out of the woodwork, and then they want to buy a home. And it's kind of just this moment in time. There's no lead up. There's no flirtation with the idea. There's no practicing and getting ready for it. There's no preparation. That's what I'm saying. I
would agree. I think what happens is there are indicators that happen to them that set them into that pattern. The majority of them that I see is people that have been renting for a long time, and now they've been a great renter for 10 years, and now they want to get a puppy, and the landlord tells them, no, you can't have any dogs. Well, I've lived here 10 years, I take care of the property. Yeah. It's like, well, to hell with the landlord. If I own my own house, I can have my puppy. Or people are renting, and they've had a decent rent, but now they got to get a bigger house bigger place because they're going to have children. it's like they see how much the rent is, and then it's like, well, geez, if I could pay that for rent, kind of like the gal that you're talking to.
Yeah.
If you can pay that and pay somebody else's mortgage, then maybe you should look into seeing what it's going to take to get you to where you need to do. So I agree. I think there's no rhyme and reason. Something sets them off, something triggers them, and then all of a sudden it's just going to happen. It's not like the old days with even my parents, where it was like, okay, you're going to get married, you're going to save your money,
Yeah.
you're going to buy a house and start a family. Now it's kind of like, or another trigger is people start, they go get their taxes done. Okay.
Yes, I know where you're going with this.
Like, you know, I feel like I'm barely making it. Now you're telling me that I owe all these taxes. And I don't know any tax consultant that doesn't say, well, Michelle, if you owned a property, a home, or even a rental, we'd be looking at these numbers differently.
Yeah.
You know? So like when people tell me, oh, you can pay off your house. I need the write-off. Why would I pay off my house? I need the write-off.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
It is a struggle, and looking at this from the millennial perspective, because that's what I am, I do understand that housing prices are quite inflated in terms of where the power of the dollar is versus how much a house costs. It's very obvious that the price of a house is much more inflated than it was even 20 years ago. So that does make it difficult for even someone like me to digest the idea of buying a home, because it does really seem a little bit hopeless. Okay, you look back and I look at my parents, and they bought their place that they currently live in. They bought it for like $400,000 maybe, and now it's worth over $1 million. And I look at that and I see what they did, and part of me, I feel a little hopeless.
Well, I think that the situation is that rentals are not going to go down. Okay, they're going up.
Yeah.
I know somebody that rents a condo. Well, at least we know who's calling. You know, they rent a condo and they are paying, and of course this is again towards the Bay Area, and they're looking to buy up here now. So they rent a condo and they're paying $1,900 a month for a 2-bedroom, 1 bath.
Yeah.
Okay, now I know that sounds like a lot, but that is a steal. But they've lived there for almost 9 years. Again, they're paying the person's mortgage, right?
Yeah.
Because back in the day, the condos they live in were selling for like $200,000. So they're basically paid for this thing, all right?
Yeah, it's finished.
Yeah. The people across the street just moved out, and the landlord went in and painted and took the carpet out and is renting it out now for $2,600 a month.
There it is.
Okay. And my client said, oh, there's no way they're going to get that, but I'm kind of worried now that my landlord's going to say, because my landlord won't want to sign lease anymore. They want to do month to month, right?
Of course.
And they said, I don't know if they're going to come back and they're going to ask us for that amount, want to get it or something like that. And so I did the numbers. I said, you know that at $2,600, that is still below the rental market. And then a couple of days later, he called and said, I talked to a gal that applied there, and she said 27 people applied for that rental.
Wow. I would love to talk to 27 people that think they can afford $2,600 a month in rent.
It's funny funny that you say that, because
it's a mortgage out here.
I said to myself, man, maybe I should like find out when people are taking applications for rentals and stand outside with my sign that says, why rent when you can own?
Yeah, well, I mean, at least in Amador County, the $2,600, it's not a big house, but it's respectable. It's a perfect starter home. But I want to go back to the story with my parents, because I was thinking about this myself. It was discouraging to think that they bought a home for $400,000, and then it not only doubled, it went up a crazy amount. It's almost triple now, I'm sure, in value. And I took myself out of it, and all of a sudden I'm inspired. It's like, okay, well, if their house shot up to over $1 million, and they didn't really do anything, they're not wealthy, they aren't overly rich. My dad owns a construction company. My mom does some dental work, dental hygiene. But before, she wasn't even doing that when they bought the house. It was just my dad and his construction. So it's not like they just came into a massive amount of money and dropped it on this $1 million home. So that's like really inspiring for me, because I think, well, yes, let's say homes are inflated right now, but I really can afford a home payment. I can do it. I don't want to. It'll put me back in some lifestyle choices, so on and so forth. But I'll tell you what, if home prices are jumping up like this now, what will my investment be in 10 years' time? Who will I encourage or discourage with my wealth building?
Absolutely. And it was kind of funny because when I was talking about, paying off houses early, my son, who's a real estate agent, he goes, "Why would you want to pay your house off? You don't owe that much." And I go, "I know, and I need the tax write-off." And I said, "But it would be nice to leave the house paid off, right? We have 4 kids." And he says, "The way the price has gone up in your house, and I put like 50% down on it," he said, "there's so much equity." He goes, "We're not all going to live there. The house is going to get sold." He said, "So instead of taking your money out of your savings and retirement to pay that darn thing off," he goes, "use that money to enjoy your life."
Yeah.
Because the values, that's how much the values are going up. So another thing that I don't think people take into consideration, they're like, "Well, why is there no inventory?" And they're like, "See, because people don't want to sell because it's too expensive to buy another house." That's not the case. The real problem is that we have a lot of people that have a ton of equity in their homes, okay? But they bought their house a long time ago, like your folks did. And they're sitting on a pretty good tax base right now.
Yep.
And they're saying, "Okay, prices are kind of high for me because I'm on a fixed income. And yeah, I could buy it all cash, but if I don't move somewhere where I can transfer my property tax, I'm going to be in trouble. If I'm selling my house and I'm selling it for 5 times what I paid for it, I'm going to be paying a bunch of capital gains on this house."
Yep.
So that is what is creating the inventory problem. They have a thing, I hope I remember the names. They have like cocooners, and those are people that like open the garage door, go in, never come out. They're never going to sell. They're going to die in the house, and somebody else is going to buy it, sell it for them. And then, but there are the people who are sitting on the fence.
Yeah.
Because they're like, "Well, I'm old now, and yeah, I have a 5-bedroom, 2-story house. It's just me and my husband, but where are we going to go?"
So I think part of that, all the stuff you just touched on, is actually also a lack of knowledge on some people's part. Because you mentioned like capital gains. Okay. If you're selling your house and you're going to buy another house, you do a 1031 exchange.
Yeah.
And then you put all of your investment, all of your wealth into the new house. You don't need to worry about capital gains.
And people don't understand that though.
Yeah. Well, and it's a lack of knowledge. And let's say you're in retirement and you're getting ready to the end of your life, and you're thinking about what you're going to give to your kids or what you're going to need for yourself and different things. There are so many different avenues you can choose from. You can put the house in a trust, give it to the kids. You could do a reverse mortgage. We're not going to talk detail about that, but if your kids are in the position, I have a couple of clients right now, they have a son, he doesn't want to live in the house. He does not like the area that they live in, and he loves where he is at right now. He doesn't want the house. On top of that, they asked him, "Well, do you at least want the money from the house?" Because they're thinking about a reverse mortgage. And he says, "Honestly, I would rather you guys be able to live comfortably and me not have to pay to take care of you or come take care of you or put you in a home, because that would break my heart." Basically, he was saying, if you guys can take care of yourself, I don't need to take care of you.
Well, that's being honest.
Yeah. So there's so many vehicles that can take place, but really a lot of this fear that people have is, in my opinion, based off of a lack of understanding or a lack of knowledge on what paths can be taken. Because not a lot of people think about that. You mentioned tax write-offs.
Right.
Nobody thinks about that when they buy a home.
And then we have the like boomerang buyers, and they're like the people who in 2008, they lost their homes. Okay. And they've been sitting there waiting and waiting, and they're renting, and they're getting frustrated because now they've eaten the cake. Okay.
Yeah.
They've had the dessert, and now it's hard to not have it. Go back to, beans and potatoes when they've been eating steak and cheesecake. Okay?
Oh, I know your analogy very well.
And so now they want to get back in the market, and they do understand the process now. And they're not that terrified of interest rates. They know, they watched what happened before.
Mm.
So those are what the competition is now. Okay. And a lot of them don't have a lot of debt either, because all the debt went in when they lost the house, right?
Yeah.
I think that the biggest problem, like when you were saying about they don't understand about 1031 exchanges, people don't understand about reverse mortgages. You know, as a real estate agent, it's like you're only as good as the people you associate with. So it's like I have to have a team of people. I have to have my go-to lender. I have to have my go-to 1031 exchange person, my go-to title person. I do a lot of probate sales, which is very sad, because it's like what people don't understand is that they're leaving so much money on the table. I just closed one the other day. $86,000 was taken by the state for the probate.
Oh my gosh.
$86,000 that the heirs did not receive.
I don't know what I would do if I lost $86,000.
$86,000, you know, and because they're not educated in the process, you know, and their father was an older man, and you know, like when I was talking to them, they said the only thing I could think of is, you know, my dad just never thought about it. I go, no, that's not true, because we actually listed the house before he died. And I said, I can't believe you don't have your house in a living trust.
Yeah.
And he says, well, when I sell this house and I move to where I'm going, I promise I'll put it in a living trust. He goes, but boy, a living trust is going to cost me around $2,000. And, you know, I'm thinking that that's really not a lot of money.
Not at all.
But, you know, I'm not saying what it is to other people.
Yeah.
However, I'm thinking that if I'm a person who is very conscientious about money, and $2,000 to $3,000 just seems like a lot of money to have somebody write up something, I would go to my heirs and say, look, we can do it one of two ways.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I could die in probate because I don't care. I can't take it with me.
Yeah.
And you guys could leave 10% on the table.
Yeah.
Or you could all come together and help me, like pay half of the trust account.
Yeah.
You know, you never know until you ask, right?
See, that's why it's important. You said team that you can trust. It's why important having a savvy realtor like you, because I would have never thought, hey, if you're going to inherit my house, why don't you fork up a little bit, because I can't afford to do the trust right now.
Because I'm doing the trust for you, not for me.
Yeah, it's creative solutions that make all the difference. It's creative
solutions. But the only reason I have that information is because the team I've wrapped around myself with.
Yeah.
You know, probate attorneys. Unfortunately, had to deal with them many times because people don't want to make that investment. Yeah. You know, they'd rather have, you know, a plasma TV in every room. And those are the same people that say, oh, I don't go on vacation because I want to leave money to my children.
Yeah.
Well, you're not leaving money to your children. You're leaving money on the table.
Exactly.
You know, the government is taking it.
I know it's a funny story, but when I was a kid, I used to measure my paychecks. So I worked for my dad when I was 10 years old, and I would always do some stuff with him, odd jobs and whatnot. But my first job, not with my dad, I worked at TJ Maxx.
Okay.
And I would always...
That could show how young you really are.
Dated myself. But essentially, I worked at TJ Maxx, and right next door was a Subway. And this is when they had $5 footlongs. And I used to measure my paychecks in $5 footlongs. I'd open it up, it's like, look at that. I just got $65 footlongs. And, you know, that legitimately, because I loved it. But it's kind of the same thing. A lot of people, they don't look at things. So if you have a $2,000 payment to get your house in trust for your kids, how many Subway sandwiches do you need to cut out of your life to get that $2,000? Like, is there really nothing? Is there really nothing that you could go for in your life to cut out and essentially get that $2,000?
I mean, if I would have thought of it before, I would have said, just showed up at Christmas one day and everybody gets a little card and it says, just want to let you know, we set up a living trust. You are part of the inheritance and that is your Christmas gift this year, right? But I learned about money early like you did. Yeah. So now I'm really going to date myself. My first job was working at Kmart.
Oh, okay. Well,
and Kmart had a great marketing strategy to get you to use all your money. They would pay you in cash.
Okay.
So you would get a little envelope and you had your paycheck was in there and then it showed what all your tax deductions are.
Okay.
And you know, if you were young, your paycheck was usually gone before the next paycheck because it was all cash. So as soon as my dad found out that I got paid cash, he sat down with me, and he always had like, a lot of, he played pool and stuff, so he had always had a lot of $1 bills and stuff.
Okay.
So he would take my paycheck, which I think mine was like $40. You had the
60
the
cents.
$60 sub. I had the $40, and he would like give me 40 ones, and he'd say, "Okay, so what do you have going on this week that you need money?" Well, I'm gonna go with my friends to movies and stuff. Well, how much is that? Well, back then it was like $5, five $1 bills. We'll put it in an envelope.
Yeah.
But off the top, I had to put away 10%.
Yes.
And okay, and so that $4 was like a major thing to me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But then he would say to me the next week I would get it, and then I'd have to put away $4. And he'd say, if you're really smart, you'll put away $8.
Yeah.
And then so that's when he taught me about compound interest.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, in my life before real estate, it helped a lot of people because I worked in a different industry, and the girls that I was training were always overspending on inventory. You know how inventory can bankrupt a business, right?
Yep.
They were always overspending. So one day I told I was being paid as a consultant, and I brought in all this monopoly money, and I'm sure the guy was thinking, so we're paying this girl $40 an hour, and she just brought monopoly money.
Playing with monopoly.
So I'm like, well, how much money are they on average spending for inventory? And he would tell me, and he goes, we're inventory poor, but then I need this, and we don't have any of them, but I have 2,000 of these.
Yeah.
So we made a bonus system where we put the money in the envelope, and whenever they would order something and they had the invoice, they had to take the money out of the envelope and clip it to the thing. And the goal
Sounds
was,
like you're talking about something kind of like equity.
yes, that's what I'm getting at. And so what we would say is, at the end of the month, as long as we have all the inventory we need, not too much, but whatever we need, and we don't run out of anything, whatever's left in that envelope will be divided between the three people ordering. The first 2 months, nobody got a bonus, and they didn't seem really worried. And I kind of had an idea what they were doing, and the doctor's thinking, well, I like this, everything's good, and then I'm not paying them a bonus, right?
Yeah.
But what they got smart at is things that wouldn't go bad. It was a dental office.
Oh,
They'd say, okay, the guy would say, okay, if you buy one of these, it's gonna be $8. But if you buy 8 of these, I'll give them to you for $6. Well, they have a shelf life forever. So the girls would be like, okay, so this month we won't get a bonus, but we're gonna buy those. And then we're not gonna need them for the next 3 months, and we're gonna build up the bonus. And they were getting $300 to $500 bonuses every month. But he was happy because he was not spending any more than he did before.
Yeah.
They weren't running out of stuff, and they weren't overspending.
Gotcha.
So it's just like you said with the equity. It's like it's compounding. You're getting it. Yeah. And as long as you're not being stupid, and like I said, borrowing to go buy just plasma TVs.
Yeah.
As long as you're, it's like, I don't know if you're familiar with Brian Buffini, but that's who my mentor is. And Brian Buffini will say what you buy, fix up, pay down. Buy, fix up, pay down. And even when people come to me, and as a real estate agent, this probably sounds terrible, but if someone says to me, hey, I have my house, and I know I can rent it for like double what I'm paying on the payment, but I was thinking, should I sell it instead and use all the money to buy another house? It's like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Take the minimum out, keep that house. I said, I am all about building wealth through real estate.
Yeah. Well, I said it at the beginning, but real estate is the #1 vehicle people use to build their wealth.
Right.
The #1.
Yes.
Like, you can think of stocks and day trading and crypto and whatever. But the tried and true thing, at least from 1970 and on, has been real estate. And the reason is because no matter what you do, if you get to a point where things get dicey and rates are going crazy and prices aren't going the way you want to and whatever's happening, you can wait. And in that 10-year time period, there will be brighter days. You do have to wait a little longer, but there will be brighter days. And since the 70s, home values have appreciated on average 3.4%. 3.24% is the general thing, but the true number is 3.4. So if you think about it, no matter what, your house will grow 3.4% on a historical average. chances are it could be up more one year and down the other year. But waiting, no matter what, you're always going to have a return on your investment.
And I mean, you think about the two scenarios that I talked about, you know, they're both mine, but 9 years later, my house was worth 3 times what I paid for it when it had gone where it was worth half what I paid for it.
Yeah.
And I lived through it. I just stuck it out because I knew, because I only invest in what I understand, and what I understand is real estate. And so it worked out. But when you think about in Amador County, where the prices compared to the Bay Area are 100 times more reasonable, and for my house in 5 years to have gone up almost 22%, that's huge.
It's
That's huge.
Well, I remember, so I moved up in Amador County in 2018. When I first came here, I remember looking at housing prices, and you could find a livable home for under $200,000.
Yes.
You could. In 2018, I just started working in Amador County then, finished up my first year, looked at the market, and I said, prices haven't changed all that much, and I need a little bit more money for a down payment. I'm going to wait. I'm going to pass this time. And I had talked with realtors, and I was looking for rentals, and every single one of them said, you have great credit. Why don't you buy a house? Your income's decent. Why don't you buy a house? And I always said, I'm waiting because I want to buy a better house, or I'm not in the market at this moment. And I was not wise back then. And then 2020, me and my wife, we started looking for a house in November of 2020. Yeah, you know where it's going. And we were right in that price range. We even put an offer on the house. It was a $200,000 house, 10 acres, 3-bedroom, 2-bath. I think it was a 4-car garage. You can tell how upset I am.
Yeah.
I remember everything about it. Great area up in Pine Grove. It was $200,000. It had a pool too. It was a little rough shape, but we put an offer $20,000 over asking, and they accepted. We go through the process. 3 days pass. We didn't get a counter offer. So I call my realtor, what gives? And he tells me, it's like, well, I just found out that they want to pull the offer and put the house back on the market. What are you talking about? He said, well, they received so many offers and they didn't realize that they underpriced the house quite significantly. Well, it goes back on the market for $260. It sold for $320. That $200,000 house overnight, November 2020. And then COVID hit, and just from there, now if you look at a $300,000 house, it might be livable.
In the Bay Area in 2021 was probably one of my biggest years in real estate, and I've been in real estate since 1997. And my years have always been very consistent. But we did not have one listing that didn't get a minimum of 12 offers. And I had one sell for $350,000 over asking.
My gosh. They just bought the house I wanted.
When I called my client, he was like, I don't even know what to say.
Oh my gosh.
And I said to him, I go, well, even though it's going to sound ridiculous, I have to say this to you. Did you want to counter the 2 highest and best? He goes, I would feel like an idiot if I did. You know?
Like, what do you say? Yes. The answer is yes.
Yeah. You know, and I mean, to me, it was like, you know, my son would say to me, there's no end in sight. I'm like, oh yes, there is an end in sight. The way I want to like kind of finish this is, I think that, you know, we both know the value of home ownership. I think that the majority of the public understands that. There's just that small few that have a lot of people in their ear about it. And the people that are talking to them probably don't even really own any real estate anyway.
I would even backtrack. I don't even think owning is the differentiation. I think it's living it every day.
Yes. And so I think that what they need to understand is that the waiting does cost money. There's a price for doing business. Right now it's rates. It's not as competitive, even though I will tell you there's still people out there bidding on houses. If it's priced right. But at the end of the day, the main thing is is that it's an end, it's a means to an end.
Yes.
Okay, it's a means to an end. How many people, you know, it's like a lot of people are going to see this, so I don't want to go into too much detail. But I mean, I've had positions in real estate where I was not happy, but I knew I wanted to buy that second house.
Yeah.
And having a 1099 and a W-2 played in my favor. So at night when I was like, this is what I would do. I'd get up in the morning and I'd put on my lipstick and I'd say, it's a means to an end, Michelle.
Yes.
That that W-2 is going to get you that second house without having to give up. And that's what it is, like with you, with the 4-bedroom, 10 acres and the swimming pool. It's like when you were holding out and waiting for the perfect house. If you had bought a home,
Yep.
if you had bought a home when you first started thinking about it, but you said, no, I deserve better than that. I want better than that.
Yeah.
I'm going to get bigger than that. Someday I know I can do it. If you had bought the means to an end, then you would have had the revenue to buy
imagine
the
that
next
leverage.
house.
Imagine that leverage.
Yes, exactly.
If I was in that house, I bought it for, just put the offer in earlier, gone a little bit higher, what it'd be worth now.
Like people will say to me now, they'll say, oh my God, don't you wish you had held on to your house in the Bay Area?
Yeah.
Okay, because it's probably would sell for about $350,000 more than what I actually sold it for. Okay, but my husband was commuting back and forth. There's no way my husband was going to let somebody rent that house.
Yeah.
Okay, my property taxes were $14,000 a year, so I would have had to maintain that property just for my husband to go down there 2 or 3 days a week.
Yeah.
And who knew what the market was going to do? And I look back now, and my tax consultant did it for me, and I kind of liked it and said, look, here's what you would have paid in taxes. He goes, so it's not that big of a loss.
Yeah.
And he goes, and plus you're happy now, right? It was a means to an end.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I think to wrap it up on my side of things, the cost of waiting is huge. And for anyone that wants one of those charts specifically tailored to their scenario, I'd be glad to do it. And I know it's a cop-out, but it's just true. If you can afford to buy a house right now and you hate the interest rates just as much as I do, buy the house, refinance it when it comes down.
Mm-hmm.
You get the best of both worlds. You get the house at the lowest point you possibly could right now, because we know the prices are going up the second interest rate drop. That I'm like 99. I never make guarantees in this industry, but I'm 99% sure if interest rates fall in the next few months or year or near future, we will see skyrocketing prices. That I'm certain of. And if that's the case, if that is the truth, buy now, refinance later. It's a cop-out, but it's just the truth.
Right. And people have to understand it's not a sales pitch on the lender and the real estate agent's part. It is the truth.
Yeah.
So since your first job was TJ Maxx, that kind of puts an age on you. But I've been in the business. I've had my license since 1997. So I've seen the ups and downs. And one thing I can tell you is I did say we don't have a crystal ball.
Yeah.
But the indicators stay the same all the time. They stay the same all the time. And the good markets may last 14 months one time, and then the next time it happens, they only last 12 months.
Yep.
Okay, but they stay within that range. Interest rates go up, they stay like that for 12 months, 18 months, and then they go back down again. It's just the way they make it work. And like you did say, with the election coming out, we're not going to see a big change.
Yeah.
Okay, we're just not going to see that. But the bottom line is that once that's over, I hate to say it like this on video, but once the pissing match is over, then everything will go back to some type of normalcy.
Yeah.
It'll be a slow process, but it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think you're exactly hit it right on the head. So just to wrap it up, Michelle, I really do appreciate you coming here and taking the time to speak with me. Your wisdom and experience is exactly what somebody would need to get into the housing market right now because of all the unique factors and circumstances. If there are any questions, where can people find you?
They can give me a call at 408-691-0382. I'm with Remax. I own my own offices, Bonfiglio Lane Group. My son is my business partner. And the great thing about that is I'm about customer service, negotiation. I think that the value I bring to a client is my knowledge of the process. Right? You can't buy that.
That
Okay.
is true.
And then bringing my son on, it really helps because he's very energetic and he's a millennial. So we understand. So
Yes.
he's the one that said, Mom, they can e-sign all this stuff. You don't have to meet with them. But my thing is I want people to understand that just because there's all this great technology is great for people that love technology.
Yeah.
But if you have someone who doesn't have a printer and scanner and a computer sitting in their house all the time, like most people, they want somebody that's going to handhold them for it. And that's what I love about doing real estate. It's all about customer service to me.
And I want to make one point to millennials that are watching, because I'm one and I can say this. Just because you can do it online doesn't mean you're going to get the service you need.
Right.
There are too many things in the home hunt, from what a 1031 exchange is, how to put your house in a trust, how to build your long-term wealth, all the way to things like how is an appraisal going to shake out. There is no robot, there is no computer, there is no online system that can guide you through those things like a very specialized realtor or a mortgage advisor such as myself.
And and I appreciated when you called me back so quickly the other day. It's like, it's been a while since I've dealt with a VA buyer or seller.
Yeah.
And my sellers, it's important that I don't tie up their property. We got a great offer, and it was with a VA. And it was like, okay, I haven't done a VA in a while. I know there's been some changes. Are the changes going to be changes that affect my seller in a positive manner or a negative manner?
Yeah.
Well, it worked out that they're in a positive manner for both the buyer and the seller right now with those VA loans. But I wouldn't have let them move forward until I spoke to someone that I trusted to give me the right answers.
Yeah.
I'm not calling their lender to ask. I'm calling the person that I trust to ask.
Well, thank you.
so anyway, so thanks. And I look forward to us getting together and doing more of these so that people will understand the process a little bit better.
Yeah, my big thing is education. So thank you guys for tuning in. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Michelle or myself. I'll put you in contact with her if you want to get in contact with her. And other than that, have a great rest of your day.
Bye.